So as Sandy said, I am Dr. Kaytlin. I am one of the doctors with the Wellness Way in Woodbury, Minnesota, but we do see patients from all over the US because we can do everything virtually as well, other than the chiropractic adjustment. But what I want to talk to you guys about tonight is understanding how mold impacts our health. It really has a huge impact. So I want to talk about that because it can be really difficult when you're experiencing a really wide variety of symptoms to even know what's going on. And I want to shed a little bit of light on that and talk about how you can find out, is it mold? Is it something else going on? But it's estimated that about 47% of homes here in America are affected by mold. And the annual cost for asthma and other respiratory illnesses because of mold is in the billions of dollars. So this is a really big issue. Over 1.6 million US homes are affected by mold every single year. And it's just such a big issue. You know, I see so many different people coming in with chronic fatigue. Maybe they have a lot of neurological issues like tremors and shaking or weird rashes. A lot of people coming in for their gut health, a lot of bloating, digestive issues, diarrhea, constipation, do some testing, find out they have a parasite, but maybe they get a parasite because they're living in that moldy environment. And until they actually address the issue, they're going to keep dealing with all these different symptoms and issues like parasites going forward. So really it's my mission to help people find out what's stressing out their bodies, and mold is a big one for so many people. Including myself. When I graduated chiropractic school, I lived in a home. I rented a really beautiful 100-year-old farmhouse out here in Wisconsin. And it was just the perfect home for us. We had a beautiful organic garden. We had chickens, we had quail. It was amazing. But then I started getting sick. I started losing a lot of weight. I lost 10 pounds and I lost another 10 pounds. A lot of my family was starting to get worried about me, even though I was eating plenty, didn't change anything about my diet or my lifestyle. Got down to about 108 pounds, which is not good for me. It's not healthy for me. And then a lot of neurological issues started to kick in, a lot of brain fog, a lot of fatigue, and it just wasn't normal. And then it turned out that we had a massive mold problem in the basement that was starting to come up into the main level, and it was growing on the ceiling of our shower, and we had to get out of there. And thankfully, as soon as we moved out, we got rid of some of our stuff. All those symptoms went away, but if you were just living in that home, maybe you own it, you might deal with those issues, for years and years and years and never be able to figure out what that issue is. So I want to talk a little bit about germ theory and terrain theory when it comes to mold. So germ theory is where we just look at the symptoms. We're looking at, okay, what is your body going through? Are you sick? Okay, you need this medication, you need this supplement, you need this oil, you need these things to help with those symptoms that you're dealing with, and you're just taking things. Terrain theory is, let's figure out what is weakening your immune system and why you're dealing with the symptoms that you're dealing with. Let's clean the tank. If it's mold, let's get that mold out of there. Let's remediate, or let's move, or let's purify the air so you're not breathing in that mold and it's not compromising your immune system. And when you have a fully functioning immune system, you don't have to worry about these different things. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the types of mold and their health effects. So mold exposure, it's going to have different health effects depending on what type and depending on their sensitivity, or really think of it, their immune system. So there's three main categories. There's going to be the allergenic mold, so molds that are going to act like allergens. So you think the stuffy nose, chronic sinus infections, which I actually saw a stat that 90% of chronic sinus infections are actually caused by mold exposure. Runny nose, itchy eyes, asthma attacks, that's more of that allergenic mold. Pathogenic molds, those are causing infections, especially in people who do have weakened immune systems, and people who have pre-existing respiratory conditions or compromised immunity are at greater risk. And then there's toxic molds. So these are going to produce something called mycotoxins. And it's some of the most dangerously naturally occurring toxins out there. And they're going to enter your body through inhalation, ingestion, or skin contact, leading to serious health problems. So mold is present in most homes to some degree, but by the time you actually see that mold, like when I started to see the mold on my ceiling, you have a way deeper hidden mold problem. So if you see it on the ceiling above your shower, if you see it underneath your kitchen sink because you had a leak there, if you see it in your basement, there's a lot more mold that you can't see as well. And the most common indoor molds, according to the CDC, are Cladosporium, Penicillium, and Aspergillus. So here's some key facts about mycotoxins. They are naturally occurring, produced by certain molds or fungi, but they can also be found in the foods that you're eating. They grow on a variety of different crops and foodstuffs, including cereal, nuts, spices, dried fruits, apples, and coffee beans, and often under warm and humid conditions. So if you're a coffee drinker like I am, you need to make sure that you have a brand that is third-party tested for mold and mycotoxins. So one of my favorite brands is Bulletproof brand coffee, but there's a lot of great coffees that are tested for mold. They can also occur on, they can pose a serious health effect to both humans and livestock, and it can cause acute poisoning, but can also lead to long-term effects such as immune deficiencies and cancers. So it's very serious that if you do have mold, if you see mold in your home, you've got to do something about it. So it can be hiding in the building materials, like porous materials like wood, paper, fabric, drywall, insulation, carpets, your windows, and your crawl spaces. Really common in windows, especially here in the Midwest, because we get that condensation and then it can cause more moisture. Drywall. If you have drywall in your basement, if you've ever had a leak down there and you haven't cut out that drywall, there's a good chance there's quite a bit of mold down there. HVAC systems, so your air ducts and your vents can be a, home for that mold. So getting your vents cleaned regularly is really important. There is one specialist that I network with, and he told me that getting them cleaned about every 3 to 4 years is pretty reasonable. And then food. We'll talk about some food, but then personal items like pillows, mattresses, damp laundry bins. If you have a lot of laundry, maybe you have, 7 kids like my mom did and have a big laundry pile and there's like a moist towel in there. If that sits there long enough, that mold can start to grow within your laundry as well. So this is actually a pillow from one of our Wellness Way doctors out in Montana, and she was dealing with infertility. She and her husband both, they weren't able to conceive for a long, long time. And all of a sudden, her husband started having seizures, and she was having a lot of health issues too. They remediated their home. They moved out into their camper. They moved into a new home. And for some reason, it just wasn't clearing up until one day she took her pillowcase off. And this is what she found. Her pillow was moldy. And that was because, every now and then she would take a shower and she would go to bed and her hair was still a little bit damp. And that dampness within her hair was getting onto that pillow and it was causing mold growth. But since she had pillowcases on there, she missed it until it got to be about this significant. And this was causing the majority of those mold problems that she was dealing with. And she was bringing that pillow to the camper with her, to their new home with them. So that's why they weren't able to really get away from it, because they were bringing it with them everywhere they went. So when someone moves and they've remediated, they want to get out of their home, whatever they're going to do, you need to get rid of your pillows. You need to get rid of anything fabric. Get rid of those mattresses. It's not worth it. We had to buy completely new mattresses when we moved into the home that we're in now, but it's not worth going through all that expense and then carrying that mold with you. So some common foods that are contaminated with mycotoxins, I have a list here. This doesn't mean you can never eat these foods, but it does mean you need to be extra picky with them. So grains, nuts, and seeds and spices are notorious for mold and mycotoxic contamination. So if you go to Costco, Costco is not the place to buy your spices because you're going to buy them in bulk. Then you're going to use it. You're going to shake it onto your, food as it's cooking. There's moisture that's going to get into that container. Then you're going to close it right back up, put it right back on the shelf, and it's going to start to grow mold. You want to get spices in smaller containers because you don't want that to happen. But corn is a really big grain for mold. Dairy from grain-fed animals and meat from grain-fed animals because they're eating the grains that have the mold on them. Nuts, so especially peanuts and pistachios. Peanuts are more often than not going to be rancid. Seeds, purchase organic from a reputable company, same with spices, as much as possible. And then coffee, purchase coffee that's third-party tested for mold. Also make sure it's pesticide-free. Chocolate is a really tricky one too, but you want to purchase organic dark chocolate from a reputable company that advertises it to be mycotoxin-free. And that's usually going to come from France or Switzerland. Our manufacturers over here don't care as much about the mycotoxins. Beer and wine, those are big ones. They're full of yeast, which is another type of fungus. So if you're already dealing with fungus and mold, you don't really want to add on top of it. And one thing I'll see very commonly with my patients that are exposed to mold is they're going to be allergic to baker's yeast and brewer's yeast because their body just cannot handle the fungi or the mycotoxins. And then citric acid, which very often is being grown from mold. So these foods commonly harbor those different toxins, and some of those are going to show up on the testing that we run through Mosaic Diagnostics that I'm going to show you. So what are some of the symptoms of mold exposure? There could be an entire PowerPoint on the symptoms of mold exposure, but these are some of the most common ones that we see in our office. On the right-hand side, this is really what Cleveland Clinic is going to look for, more of those allergic reactions like sneezing, coughing, red eyes, postnasal drip, nasal congestion, wheezing. This is why medicine really brushes off a lot of people who are concerned about mycotoxins because when I was exposed, and a lot of my patients who are exposed, they don't deal with those symptoms. They don't have the red eyes, sneezing, and the coughing. They have things more like eye floaters, ringing in their ears, POTS, so postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So getting really dizzy when you stand up, having some severe dizziness all the time, having basically heart palpitations. Severe anxiety and impending doom is a really big one. Severe brain fog and dementia. A lot of people feel like they're going into dementia and it's actually mold. MCAS, so MCAS is mast cell activation syndrome. So mast cells are the cells that are going to create histamine and create basically an allergic reaction. Well, mold can trigger those immune cells to constantly go off, causing tons of histamine and making you feel like you're allergic to literally everything. I have a few patients with MCAS that can't even walk into a room where someone's wearing something that has been washed in detergent with fragrances. Or they can't walk into a room where someone put on lotion because their immune system can't handle it. Frequent strep infections, pins and needles throughout your body. So just getting weird, like numbness and tingling just randomly. Dizziness and vertigo. Seizures is a big one. Facial numbness, kidney problems. So we'll talk about how mycotoxins affect your kidneys and your liver a lot. Rashes, frequent yeast infections, and then headaches, migraines, and fatigue are some pretty major ones too. But there's a lot of things that can cause fatigue and migraines and headaches, so it's hard to pinpoint that. So this is a quote from Dr. Jill Krista. We'll talk about her book at the end, but she's an amazing doctor when it comes to mold sicknesses. But in short, mold toxicity is going to make you feel hazy, crazy, and lazy. A lot of these people are being told it's all in your head. You're just lazy, when really the fatigue is real. The dizziness is real. The brain fog is real. It almost feels like you have, pieces of your memory cut out and you just can't remember them. And it makes you feel crazy when you're not. So when it comes to mold sicknesses, you go into your medical doctor and you're going to tell them all of this big list of symptoms, and they might diagnose you with something like fibromyalgia or POTS, and they're going to give you anti-anxiety medications. But are they ever actually going to figure out what's causing those symptoms? Are they going to run a mold test on you? Are they going to ask if you live in a moldy home? I've yet to have a patient who has ever had a medical doctor ask about that. And that's because really we have two different approaches here. We have the medical approach, and that's what we would like to call the fireman. If your house is on fire, you'd call the fire department because they have an axe, they have a hose, they're going to break down your door, they're going to spray your house down, and they're going to save your home from being a pile of embers at the end of the day. However, they're not going to help you rebuild the house. They're not always going to help you figure out why your house even started on fire in the first place. They did their job, and that job was getting you out of that emergency situation. And medicine's the same way. They have medications and they have surgery that's going to save your life. And we are so thankful for that. If you're having seizures because of mold exposure, I don't want you in my office in that moment. I want you in their office getting the care that you need to keep you alive and keep you safe. But after that, you're out of that emergency situation. We need to find out what's leading to that. And that's where you need to call in a carpenter. A carpenter is going to restore your home, rebuild what the fire destroyed, and hopefully give you tips and tricks to avoid fires in the future. And that's what we do at the Wellness Way is, we appreciate that medical approach and we appreciate herbs, supplements, and oils to support your body as you are addressing these symptoms, but you also need to figure out what's starting that fire, and that's what we do with our testing. So when it comes to mold sickness, we need to understand that it's not just going to affect one thing. It's going to affect your body as a whole. So this is how we look at your body at the Wellness Way. Your body is like a Swiss watch. You have a bunch of gears that all need to work together in order for that watch to function. Now, if you were to remove one gear or damage one of those gears, it's going to affect all of the rest of the gears. Well, the same thing is true about your body. You have your biggest gear in the middle, and that is actually your nervous system. Your brain and your spinal cord is going to talk to every single organ system, and it's going to tell it what to do. And it's also going to get feedback from those organs through your nervous system. But also you have your hormones, your circulation, your skeletal system, your immune system, and they all work together to allow your body to function or to be healthy. Now, let's say mold. You're exposed to mold. That's going to affect your immune system. It will initially over-trigger that immune system, and then eventually that immune system will crash, and that's when we see immunocompromisation, where any single cold virus that's going around could be a big problem for you. That's when we see people are getting cancers when that immune system is tanking. And that can affect everything from your respiratory system to your endocrine to your digestive. So we need to understand that your body, these organ systems, don't live on a rock. And going to a specialist, they're not going to look at every organ system. They're just going to look at your cardiovascular system or your digestive system when you really need to look at the whole body. So what do we do at the Wellness Way? We test. We aren't going to guess. I don't like to guess that mold is the problem, because then what if we're spending a whole year working on your mold and working on your liver and your kidney pathways when maybe it's something else like a gut infection or mental stress or autoimmune? We want to be very specific so that you can hit the ground running. So we test the body, and this is one of our mold tests that we run, and this is through it used to be called Great Plains. Now it is Mosaic Labs, but they run a really great urine test testing for many different types of mycotoxins, and those different mycotoxins are going to affect different organs in different ways. So it's important to know what kind of mold are you dealing with. So this is actually from a little boy that came in to see me a few months ago, and he was dealing with rash after rash after rash. He is dealing with a lot of mood swings. Honestly, he's the sweetest boy ever. However, he goes through these periods where, he gets really mean to his sister. He all of a sudden isn't very respectful to his parents, and it's in just a very out of character way for him that his parents have noticed. They also have noticed he's had a lot of anxiety. He can't sleep by himself. Dad has to lay down with him in his bed until he falls asleep every single night, even though he's 8 years old. And then if he wakes up in the middle of the night, he has to crawl into mom and dad's bed because he has feelings of anxiety and he just cannot sleep alone. Come to find out, he has two mycotoxins that are really affecting him. The first one is ochratoxin A, which is the most common type of mold that we see in water damaged homes. And then mycophenolic acid, which is a mycotoxin that comes from penicillin and aspergillus molds. So for him, we need to figure out where the mold is, and we got him set up with a remediation company right away, and they did find sources of mold. And we've got to support his liver and his kidney pathway so he can push that mold out so his body can heal and restore from there. So this is a picture of the whole human body and how different mycotoxins will affect those different organ systems. So this one we have highlighted in black, the two mycotoxins from the last page from this little boy. So this was ochratoxin A and that mycophenolic acid as well. So you'll see ochratoxin A, it's going to affect your nervous system, so it's neurotoxic. Oxidative stress, so think cancer. We don't want any oxidative stress. Immunotoxicity, so it can cause issues with the immune system, potentially swollen lymph nodes happening. Hepatotoxic, so very toxic to the liver, affecting how his body can detox. Carcinogenic, it is nephrotoxic as well, so it's toxic to the kidneys, toxic to the GI, so gut, and then it's also toxic to those reproductive organs. We're seeing more and more people who are exposed to mold experiencing infertility. And I even have a case I'm going to talk about later where a couple was able to have 3 children, then they moved into a home and all of a sudden they couldn't conceive anymore. and it turned out that they are exposed to mold on a day-to-day basis. So ochratoxin A, this is by far the most common mold that we are seeing in these patients who are sick with mycotoxins. So ochratoxin A, it is an ochratoxin, or it's a mycotoxin produced by several different types of Aspergillus species and also Penicillium species. It's known to induce nephrotoxicity, or basically kidney toxic to kidneys, I should say. Glomerulonephritis, so inflammation within those kidneys, and nephrotic syndrome. Sorry, guys, can't talk tonight. So it is known as a group 2B carcinogen by the IARC as well. So where do we find this mold? Well, it's really found in our food supply chain. So contaminated foods like coffees, nuts, wines, grains, dairy, or contaminated animal products as well. They've detected it in bottled water, plant food supplements, and food coloring agents. So according to the European Commission report, the estimated adult exposed to ochratoxin A is from 44% from cereal, 10% from wine, 9% from coffee, 7% from beer, 5% from chocolate, 4% from dried fruits, and then meats, spices, and 15% from others. What we mainly are concerned about is ochratoxin is found in dust samples from water damaged buildings, offices, and ventilation systems. So when we're in buildings all day, every single day, we're at school, we're at home, we're at work. If these buildings have ochratoxin in them, that could be affecting your health as well. So this was a patient that came in. She's 36. Well, now she's 38. But she came in because every time she ate anything, she had horrible burning pain in her stomach, like someone stabbing her with a hot, like poker. And she really started experiencing it after 2020 because she and her boyfriend at the time were making a lot of like craft cocktails. They were having fun. They were making cocktails at night, not drinking a ton, but they were making a little bit of a habit about it. And ever since then, this burning in her stomach started happening. So she thought maybe it's because I was having alcohol, but I cut out the alcohol and it's still happening. So what do I need to do to repair? Well, we got her food allergies tested, and we tested both her IgG food allergies, so that's more chronic inflammation causing foods. Most people don't know that they have those food allergies because maybe you eat a peanut and then 3 weeks later your throat is really itchy, or maybe 3 weeks later you get hives, or a month later you have brain fog. So you wouldn't normally associate it with the food you ate a few weeks ago. She had a few of those. But what we also tested was her IgE food allergies. So those are instant anaphylactic, you ate a peanut, your throat swells up kind of allergies. 99% of the time, you know you have those allergies because it's an instant reaction. Now with her, when we tested that allergy, we only test 8 of the most common because they're not very common. She had about 6 of 8 of those foods. So knowing that she had 6 of those foods, I knew there was a chance that there were some that we didn't test that she could be reactive to. So we ran an extended allergy panel, and these right here on the right are her instant anaphylactic kind of food allergies, like an instant reaction, whether it's a rash or burning in your stomach or throat swelling up. She had 20 IgE allergies out of the 36 that were tested. So things like almond, barley, soybeans, which think how many things soy is in, pretty much everything processed, cabbage, so even sauerkraut she needs to stay away from, carrots, cauliflower, celery, rice, tomato. But why did she have all of these food allergies? She was having a severe histamine reaction to these foods because she was being exposed to mold on a day-to-day basis. Like she found mold in her laundry room and she had to take care of that. She had to get rid of her washer and her dryer, and she had to redo that laundry room that had mold damage. Because what that mold was doing was, aside from causing those histamine reactions, she also was having recurrent genital herpes infections because she had been exposed, but she wasn't able to stay in that remission because her immune system was so compromised. And she also couldn't lose weight because of all the inflammation that this mold was causing for her. And we see this really commonly, people coming in, I can't lose weight, I'm cutting calories, I'm eating keto, I'm doing all the right things, I'm exercising every single day, I'm doing all the cardio, and I can't lose weight, I'm only gaining weight. that's when you need to think about in the back of your mind, are you being exposed to mold? This is another patient, a 30-year-old male. He has chronic seasonal allergies. He gets hives in the spring and then hives in the fall. So he just kind of wrote it off as just seasonal allergies, but we ran an immune panel and found that his T cells, his helper T cells, his suppressor cells, all the cells that regulate how his immune system is going to respond to allergies and respond to foreign invaders, they were all really, really low, other than those percentage of the CD19 cells. But those were also concentration-wise really, really low. So his immune system couldn't fight anything. And his suppressor cells were really low. So that means his immune system couldn't really regulate itself either. And we found out for him as well that he was living in a moldy home. And that mold was suppressing his immune system. And now he was susceptible to anything. And he was having a lot more of a histamine response to things as well. This is another patient. So she is the one I was speaking about earlier, but she's a 40-year-old woman. She was experiencing recurrent miscarriages and also a lot of estrogen dominance symptoms, and she was not getting a period. So we did some testing and found out that she did have a bit of estrogen dominance. We got her hormones tested here on the left and the right. On the left-hand side, this is her hormones within the urine to see how is her liver processing her hormones and getting them out. And then on the right-hand side is a blood test for her hormones. And what we see here is if we look at progesterone on the right, progesterone is essential for supporting your body in having a normal cycle, but also in becoming pregnant and maintaining that pregnancy. Now, this progesterone was taken after the time of her cycle where she should have ovulated. And I want to see that number closer to a 12, but at least over a 3. And if it's not above 3, I know she didn't release an egg that cycle. She was at a 0.55, so she can't get pregnant if she doesn't release an egg. And then as we go down, we're looking at her estradiol, or E2, which is her most potent female hormone. That was at 230. At most, she should be at 214 for that luteal phase of her cycle. So either she was in her mid-cycle peak or she has way too much estrogen. And as we found out later on, it was just way too much estrogen in her system. And one thing that happens when you're exposed to mold is a type of fungus, or kind of, yeast is a type of fungi as well. And mold and yeast will bind to the estrogens that you create, like a lock and a key. And it creates a really big molecule that your liver can't process out quite as efficiently as mold or estrogen when they're not bound together. So if your liver can't get that big molecule out, it's going to send that molecule where there's a high affinity for estrogens, and that's going to be the lining of your uterus. So that endometrial lining. So that's when we see women get things like endometriosis when they're exposed to mold, because that big molecule is going to go to that endometrial lining. It's going to get thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker, causing really painful periods, causing really heavy periods, and eventually can grow outside of that uterus onto the fallopian tubes, the ovaries, and even the colon, and can cause a lot of issues there. So she was dealing with some of those symptoms as well, but she was also dealing with miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage. So we started working on her hormones because we weren't sure exactly what was going on. We also got a stool test and found she had some infections, and we were working through that for probably a good 6 to 9 months. And her testing was looking different every time we would retest, but it wasn't looking better. And she wasn't getting pregnant, and the 2 times she did get pregnant, she miscarried. So I told her, you know what? I don't like that your tests aren't changing or aren't getting better. I think there's something else to the story here. I think that we need to explore if potentially you're getting exposed to mold, because if you're exposed to mold, your immune system is going to protect you from getting pregnant, because when you get pregnant, your immune system naturally needs to get lower so that your immune system doesn't attack baby, because baby is not self. But if you're exposed to mold, your body thinks that you're fighting a battle and it needs to keep fighting that mold, and it's going to protect you from getting pregnant. It's a defense mechanism. You guys, if you're struggling to get pregnant, there's a reason why that your body won't allow you to get pregnant, and you need to find out why that is rather than forcing a pregnancy on a body that's not ready for it with IVF or IUI. As helpful as those procedures can be, you need to get your body ready first. So for her, when I told her that, she actually said, well, this weekend, we looked behind our bed. We were doing some rearranging, and there was mold on the wall behind our bed because we had curtains there, and the curtains were trapping the moisture from the window between the curtain and the wall. So they had mold in their bedroom she was getting constantly exposed to, and it was getting in the way of her being able to conceive a baby. Now, what I recommended to her was either move or remediate with a professional remediator. Now, they didn't necessarily have the money to do professional remediation, so her husband did the remediation, and now he's a patient because that mold got him sick as well, trying to do that remediation work. So you guys take it very, very seriously. Please do not do the remediation on your own. Hire someone, hire a professional. It is worth the money. It's not worth your health to do it on your own. So this was actually her stool test. Saw lots and lots of infections. She had 5 different bacteria infections and 1 yeast infection. And later on, when we tested that mold, it made a lot more sense. Hey, your body can't fight these off because your immune system is being compromised by this mold. So this is her mold test. She was positive for ochratoxin A, and she was positive for another mycotoxin, citrinin. Do 2 different things, but what you can see on the left here is ochratoxin A, of course, is going to affect every single organ system tested. But citrinin is also going to have added effects on your immune system, your liver, so it's going to affect how you can process your hormones and how you can detox. It is carcinogenic. It's a group 3 carcinogen. It is toxic to your kidneys and it is toxic to your reproductive organs. So do you think this was affecting her fertility? Absolutely. And it's a long journey once you find the mold. But they've removed most of it. They're remediated their home to the best of their ability, and they're trying to sell that home and get out of it as well. So what do you do when you think you might have mold? Well, get that testing done and then do some investigation. So there's definitely some meters that you can get on Amazon. So here is one, a wood moisture meter, so pinless and colors that you can order from Amazon, but also a thermal imaging camera as well for building inspections. And it might just be good to have these for if you are buying a home and being able to bring that in with you as you're looking at homes, because mold is expensive, you guys, and you want to avoid it. If you know that a home that you're looking at potentially could have mold, don't buy it. Have someone come in and inspect it. Bring one of these tools in there. All right, so you found out that you have mold in your home. What are you going to do about it? Number one thing is you need to change the environment. You need to clean the tank. You need to be the fish in the clean fish tank. So the best case scenario is move out of the mold. That's probably the cheapest way to do it if you're renting, especially like I was. But you need to get out of that environment and don't bring very much stuff with you. If it's fabric, throw out your clothes, throw out your couch, throw out your mattress. It's not worth bringing with you. Wipe things down that can be wiped down, but don't bring that mold to your new home. Remediate or clean up. This is, one of the probably second best way to do it. However, remediation does not always work. You need to have someone that you can trust to do the remediation that's going to do a good job. And remediation doesn't always take care of all the mold. So you could spend $70,000 on remediating your home and then still have mold grow back. And then the last one is don't breathe it in. So air purification. And there's lots of different options for air purification techniques out there. A lot of people are going to say like really good HEPA filters. But one of my favorites is going to be the Triad air filter, and I'll talk about that. But that's not just a filter, it's also a purification. And what it's doing is it's sending out molecules to bind to the mold, basically neutralize that mold or other toxins in your air, and it gets so heavy it just falls to the ground. That's what I have in my home to make sure that we aren't still breathing in mold even in our new place, and it's definitely a great option. Number 2, you need to support your immune system because mold is almost always immunogenic or immunotoxic. So it's going to affect your immune system. So you want to avoid excess sugars because sugar is going to suppress your immune system. You want to get your food allergies tested because when you're eating foods that are chronically inflaming you, whether it's those instant kind of food allergies or chronic inflammation causing food allergies that you don't react to right away, it's keeping your immune system too busy to fight other things. And when you're exposed to mold, you need to allow your immune system to get that mold out. Get your immune system tested. So like with that 30-year-old male, his immune system was tanked. So we're supporting him with a lot of medicinal mushrooms as well as some herbs and supplements to get him through that. And then adding in those medicinal mushrooms, reishi, chaga, turkey tail, those are cordyceps. Those are all amazing sources when it comes to supporting your immune system through mold exposure. Number three, support your detox organs. So liver, get your liver tested. But also there's a lot of ways to support your liver. We'll talk about on the next section here. Kidney testing, because a lot of molds are going to be toxic to your kidneys and your kidneys are constantly filtering. Specific supplementation. So I could have 10 people exposed to mold and I'm going to have 10 very different supplementation schedules for them because it depends on what kind of mold they're exposed to and how well their body is handling that mold and what organ systems need the most support. We're not one size fits all. We need specific testing to know what to do for your body. Red light and infrared sauna is an amazing support. We have infrared in our office that I recommend all of my patients who are exposed to mycotoxins to hop in there a few times a week to help the body get rid of mold. Infrared is going to go deeper than other saunas, and it's going to go to a cellular level and even going to stimulate your mitochondria to make energy and to support that detox. And you don't have to sweat in an infrared sauna to get the benefits. And then vibration plates, and we're going to talk about that, but that's amazing for lymphatic flow. And then number four, gut support. Your gut is your second biggest detox organ. Your skin is your biggest, which is why we see a lot of skin rashes with mycotoxins. But you want to make sure you're having a daily bowel movement. If you are not pooping every day, you need to do something about that. Take a lot of aloe vera juice or chamomile supplementation. You need more than just the tea. You want a chamomile. If you're going to do chamomile, do it in a tincture. Sauerkraut. If you get a good quality refrigerated sauerkraut like Bubby's that's in a brine, you can take a tablespoon or two of that brine and you're typically going to go that day. Castor oil packs, you want to wear those over the liver and you want to make sure it's a clean castor oil. I like Queen of the Thrones brand and I get it from Amazon and it's an amazing one. I do a tablespoon on my castor oil pack. I put it right over the liver, and the liver is on the right side, right underneath your rib cage, and that's where you would wear it. And I typically will wear it overnight, at least 2 or 3 days a week. Drink a lot of water and get a lot of electrolytes. You need to flush those toxins out. And then digestive bitters like dandelion root and Oregon grape and anything that contains berberine is really great with supporting your liver and your gallbladder to release bile. And bile is how you're going to get rid of most of these mycotoxins. And then binders. So binders like zeolite sprays or activated charcoal or bentonite clay, they're going to bind to the toxins so they don't cause more damage on the way out. And then the last one is coffee enemas. Make sure you have an organic, mycotoxin-free coffee. Make sure it's not hot. You can get hot water bottles with enema attachments on Amazon, or you can go into certain places and they'll do the coffee enemas for you. And coffee enemas, aside from just cleaning you out, they also support your body in making glutathione, and that's your body's one of its best antioxidants. And antioxidants are going to help, reverse that oxidative stress and damage from the mold, and also supporting your liver and detoxing that mold out effectively. All right, so effective mold cleanup and remediation. So these are a few tips to get you started. Number one, reduce your humidity in your home. Make sure your humidity is below 50%. Improve the ventilation. And there's a lot of companies that will come in and check in on ventilation in your home and make sure it's effective. Number three, HEPA filters and air purifiers like the Triad air filter. Number four, professional testing and remediation. So make sure they're ANSI, IICRC certified mold remediation specialists. You don't want just anyone coming into your home. There's a lot of people who don't know what they're doing, but are happy to take your money. So make sure that you're working with someone who is certified and someone who understands. And number five, check your pillows. Don't go to sleep with wet hair, you guys. Take that as a lesson. That's a really great place for hidden mold to be, is in your pillows. So I hope you all check your pillows tonight. Regularly throw your pillows out, you guys. You shouldn't be using the same pillow for years on end. I try to switch my pillows out every 6 months to a year just to make sure because yeah, I do sometimes go to bed with wet hair. I'm guilty of that, you guys. I'm gonna be honest with you. But I'll just pay the price of a new pillow every few months to make sure that I don't have mold. So this is, if you are in the Minnesota or the Wisconsin area, this is a company that I trust and I personally have them come in when I'm looking at a home to buy or a home to move into because I never want to get stuck in mold again. But they are amazing at evaluating your home for mold. I have a lot of patients who have used them and they will give you a packet with, I want to say it's maybe 25, 30 pages in it, a full report about your home, about risks of mold, about risks of CO2 and other toxic buildups that aren't even mold, about things that you need to repair or replace. And they're going to give you some steps on what to do to make your home as healthy as possible in all areas, not just mold. So I highly recommend Green Home Solutions. And we work with one located in the Twin Cities area, but there are locations all over the US. So definitely check them out, look them up, and see if there's one in your area as well. So to be honest, like when my patients do end up with that, being told that they have mold in their home, or we get that positive mold test, it's heartbreaking, you guys. Mold is one of the toughest things to have to deal with. And I honestly could cry for anyone who is dealing with it because I've gone through it and it is devastating. And there are some people who cannot move. There are some people who don't have $50,000 to remediate their home or $20,000 to remediate. So what are some things that you can do if it's just not in the budget, if it is just not possible? Well, this is something that can help you in the meantime. So this is the Triad Air Purifier. So it's a whole home air purification and sanitizing solution. So it's going to use 4 protective technologies. It's going to use ozone. It has an ion antenna, negative ionization, and advanced photocatalytic oxidation. So a lot of big fancy words. If you go on their website, they go in depth on what all those different things are and how they support you and protect you from mold and other pathogens, including viruses and bacteria. But it all works together to provide the highest quality of indoor air protection without relying on or replacing filters. And if you reach out to our office, I will be happily share a coupon for 20% off of this purchase. It isn't cheap. I want to say this is right around $1,200 or $1,300 whole price for that whole home purifier. But I have one in my home and I can tell you it's worth every single penny, having that peace of mind. But this is a test from another doctor within the Wellness Way, Dr. Alex, out of our Ohio location. But he gave me this test here where they did an indoor sample in a home. And what they found was Aspergillus and penicillium-like mold. So think of that ochratoxin A, the most common one we're going to see. The raw count when it was at 7, and the count per meter was at 370. Then they started running the Triad air purifier, and it went down from a raw count of 7 to 2, and a count per million from 370 to 110. And the total spore count went from 1,100 to 430. Background debris decreased from +3 to a +2, and all the other spores also went down as well. And the cladosporium, it went from a raw count of 2 to undetectable and a count of 110 to undetectable. So this thing really does take some of that load off of your body and off of your home, because if you're not breathing in that mold, it's not going to affect your body. So that's the idea with the Triad air purifier. So again, you guys, if you're interested, reach out to our office. Even if you're not interested in scheduling an appointment or anything, we would be happy to send you that link so that you can save money on that, because I really want everyone to have freedom from mold and that toxicity. So vibe plate, we talked about vibing. Why should you have a vibe plate, or why should you use a vibe plate? If you have a local chiropractor, a lot of them might have a vibe plate. We have 2 in our office. The main uses is it's going to increase your neuromuscular function. It's going to increase your coordination, and it's going to help with postural muscles, strengthen those muscles. But another thing that I love about it is that it's going to increase your lymphatic flow. So lymphatics, that's where your immune system, a big part of your immune system is going to live and start to address infections, including mold. So that's where your lymph nodes come into play. And when you're vibing, it helps get that moving. And it's also going to stimulate the immune system. So getting circulation going there as well. Infrared sauna. So this is the infrared sauna we have in our office, but it's going to penetrate deeply into the tissues and it's going to help the body remove all kinds of stored toxins, including heavy metals like arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury, but also those mycotoxins and mold too. And then get tested. Don't just guess with mold because maybe you're living in a moldy home, you start doing all these interventions, but you never tested the mold and then you're never doing a retest. You don't know if you're actually still suffering from that mycotoxin or not. So getting a mold test is really important. We get ours through Mosaic. So if you are interested, for sure, set up an appointment with our office. I'd be happy to get you set up with a mold test to get you some answers. But also mold is going to affect your immune system. So get an immune panel done to see, is your immune system compromised or is it overactive? What do we need to do to support your immune system so it can fight against mold? But also getting your liver tested to make sure it can detox. Dutch test to make sure you're able to get hormones out effectively. Getting your hormones tested throughout the blood because mycotoxins can lead to things like estrogen dominance and infertility. Adrenal glands, because mold can stress out your body and can create excess cortisol, can cause that weight gain around your middle. Food allergies, and then MTHFR and other gene mutations, that could make you more susceptible to mycotoxins causing issues for you. There are some people who can live in a moldy home and be perfectly fine. There are some people who cannot. For example, I was living in that moldy home and I was almost considering having to take a leave of absence from work because I couldn't function, whereas my husband had no symptoms at all. It's going to affect different people differently, and it depends on your genes. It depends on your liver function. It also depends on whether you're a male or you're a female. If you're a female, you naturally are supposed to have more fat tissue than a male, and that fat tissue will store these mycotoxins and can make you sicker as well. So you guys, if you are interested in getting testing, I will put a link in the Zoom chat here as soon as I stop sharing my screen. And I want to offer you guys a free phone call. So the first 10 people who reach out using that link, the link is going to close. So it is only going to be valid for tonight, but the first 10 people are going to get a free phone call with me and we're going to talk about this stuff and talk about if this is right for you too. But let's talk about supplements. Let's talk about some doTERRA things. So of course, getting tested is important. But in the meantime, while you're waiting on that, what can you do to support your body in detoxing, support your liver, and also support energy because mold can be completely draining. So the first one here is detox support. So the Zendocrine. We have both the dietary supplement form, but also a oil blend. So the supplement is going to have burdock root, it's going to have clover flower, dandelion root, which is amazing for thinning the bile and getting toxins out through that liver, garlic bulb, and artichoke leaf. The oil is going to have tangerine, rosemary, which is amazing for detoxing, as well as geranium, juniper berry, and cilantro. Cilantro is amazing for detoxing not only mycotoxins, but also those heavy metals too. And you can dilute it in 4-ounce fluid ounces of liquid as well. Glutathione support and liver support. So aside from those super fun coffee enemas that we're all excited to do tonight, also you can take turmeric. So turmeric is going to support your liver in producing glutathione, which is going to be very effective in protecting against free radicals and protecting against oxidative damage. So glutathione is amazing for phase 2 of liver detoxification. And then there's the foundational wellness and Terrazyme. If you don't have that foundational wellness, how are you going to be able to fight any kind of sicknesses like, any kind of toxins like mycotoxins or, flu or cold viruses? So it's important to have that foundation. So the PB Restore to support that biome within your gut, the omegas to support healing, and then the VMGs to make sure you're getting those nutrients you need, and then that Terrazyme as well. To support with breaking things down. Purify and Air X as well. So Purify is the oil of purification. So it's going to have cilantro, which is going to be great for detoxing. And then tea tree, which is going to purify and freshen the air, and lime, which is very stimulatory, and citronella, which is also a potent cleanser. Lemon, which is going to purify the air, and then Siberian fir, which is just going to help with calming everything down. You know, if you're experiencing a lot of anxiety because of that mold toxicity, it's important to, support your body in calming as well. Air X is the oil of discerning, but it's going to have, different components like frankincense, which is going to support DNA as well as relaxation, satisfaction, peace. Cardamom, which is really going to be great, especially if you have more of the respiratory issues with the mold. Grapefruit for cleansing the air, tangerine, really great for cleansing the air and supporting creativity. And then Litsea for promoting feelings of openness. So it's just a really great support overall to diffuse. So this is important. When you are trying to clean mold, don't use bleach to kill the mold because it can become more toxic. It can spread faster. Same with just doing a pure ozone machine. What's going to happen with bleach especially is you're only killing that surface mold. You're feeding the roots of the mold. The mold is going deep into whatever it's growing on, and you're only seeing the surface. You're only seeing the tip of the iceberg when it comes to that. So this is an alternative here, doTERRA On Guard surfaces and body. So using all the variety of the On Guard products, it is going to be very supportive in killing different toxins. So it's a really great one to keep on hand. And then doTERRA Stronger, really supportive for not only your skin, not only mood, but also just giving you some uplifting when it comes to anxiety as well. And then doTERRA Abode, that is going to be a blend of lemon eucalyptus, tea tree, cilantro, a lot of the things we've talked about earlier, lime, and then cassia with the buildup, fights buildup while cleansing. So you can actually get a surface cleaner, or you can even do that surface spray, just making sure to get rid of everything that could be on those surfaces, especially if you're leaving a moldy home and you're bringing your coffee table with you, you're bringing your kitchen table with you. Like, you need to make sure to really get that cleaned well. Now, this is something that I use with myself and my family, and it's colloidal silver nasal spray. So this has silver particles, and these silver particles are much, much smaller than a lot of the other particles out there. And it's going to be antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal, and antiparasitic. So if you're breathing in mold spores, do a couple of shots up your nose, each nostril, and that's going to support that antifungal properties in protecting you from mold. And then energy support, because a lot of us are fatigued when we're exposed to mold. So peppermint, really uplifting. You can even just hold it under your nose and it's just going to give you a little bit of a boost. And then Northern Escape, which is a blend of different firs and frankincense and clove to support energy, but also clove is amazing when it comes to the immune system as well. And then also MetaPower to support mitochondria, which is that powerhouse of the cell. So it's going to support boosting energy, supporting your metabolism and cognition, which is a huge one. If you're dealing with those memory issues and that brain fog, this could be a great support for you. And then doTERRA Cleanse and Restore. So a lot of great products when it comes to cleansing the body, detoxification. So definitely lean into a lot of these. We mentioned all of these except for that DDR Prime as well. And that GX Assist are some that I haven't mentioned yet, but definitely look into these ones, and lemon as well. These are two books that I love when it comes to mold. So if you want to nerd out about mold, you want to go deeper dive into mold and getting more tools on how to take back your health if it has been, compromised with mold. Breaking the Mold by Dr. Jill Krista. She's the one who had the lazy crazy quote. She is an amazing doctor to follow. She's a naturopathic doctor when it comes to mold. And then there is Toxic, Heal Your Body from Mold Toxicity, Lyme Disease, Multiple Chemical Sensitivities, and Chronic Environmental Illness by Dr. Neil Nathan, who's a medical doctor. A very interesting thing that can happen is if you are exposed to mold, and I learned about this from another medical doctor as well, you potentially are more susceptible from being bitten by a tick that's infected with things like Lyme and other Lyme co-infections. There's something that our bodies give off that make us a little more appetizing to them. And I got bit by a tick when I was exposed to mold and ended up with a lot of sicknesses from some co-infections there and had to heal. So if you are suffering from mold, you're suffering from Lyme, or you're wondering which one it is, it could be both, but you can test for that and get very specific with what to do. And this book talks a lot about that. So you guys, I want to thank you for hanging out with me tonight for this hour talking about mold. I hope that this gave you some tips and tricks. I hope that you guys are inspired to check under your kitchen sink, check under your bathroom sink, check in your basement, check your pillows tonight. Make sure that there isn't mold. If you find mold, visible mold, there's more underneath the surface that you're not seeing, and you need to do something about it before it affects you, before it affects your family. So getting that mold testing can go a long way when it comes to preserving your health. So I want to give you guys a discount tonight. So again, you can sign up for that phone call through the link I'll provide in the Zoom in just a moment here. But also, if you sign up for a new patient appointment for $99, you get to save $100 on that new patient appointment. That will include health history and past results. We'll talk about that. An exam. And then if you are close to the Woodbury, Minnesota area, we'll do full spine x-rays included in that $99. But if you aren't local, you can also do everything virtually over the phone minus the x-rays. Then we would make the best test recommendations for you to get you on that path to health. So instead of $199, I do want to offer that discount for $99 for you guys tonight. You can call our office and mention that you were on this doTERRA Zoom, and we'll honor that for you. If you have friends or family that you think could benefit from this, tell them to, tell us about that deal, and we're going to extend it to them as well. Would love if you guys would contact us. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, wherever you hang out. We're there posting little videos every single day on our different perspective on health. But this is our contact information. So our phone number, our email, our website, as well as our address. So take a picture of this or a screenshot. Otherwise, we can always put this information in the chat as well. All right, you guys, I hope this was helpful. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it back over to Sandy.